Welcome back to the International Classroom Podcast. As we're wrapping up Season 2, we're going to hit rewind to revisit 10 of the most impactful, insightful, and thought-provoking discussions that we've had throughout this season. So join us as we dive back into these episodes and relive some of the magic from the past season.
Well, I will let you know when it becomes a common practice to meld the two. In all jokes aside, I think that, at least in my experience, people who are steeped in behavioral design do not typically have learning experience design experience, and vice versa. So I think the shift is in not looking at a problem as necessarily a learning problem. That kind of limits you to saying, okay, well, what do we need to teach and what skills do they need to develop? Sometimes when you're looking at performance, it's useful to step back and say, sometimes knowledge isn't the thing that matters. To give you an example, if you're asking somebody to recycle, so let's say that this is a behavior you would like to promote. It's perhaps not so much in the education space, but let's say hypothetically, there is a learning component where you can say, okay, well, how can we give them learning experiences so that they understand what recycling is, why that's important, what behaviors are related to it. They know how to do it, how to sort different types of recyclables, etc. Right? So you could try to solve it like that. But there are other ways of doing it as well. So, for example, if you don't put recycling bins near to somebody, they will typically not do it. So even if they know that they should, and there's a greater degree of friction to walk from here to the other side of a park to dispose of it, they typically wouldn't. So it's recognizing that solving for knowledge, skill, and awareness isn't always enough to determine the behavior that you're looking for or the performance that you're looking for.
Yeah, just listening to you then, I'm trying to wrap my head around this in terms of my experience in my own classroom, and from a science teacher. Like we had this discussion today in school because we were talking about obviously something we're delivering and with different subjects, and speaking with one of the historians, it was like we're very knowledge heavy. So in terms of our learning outcomes, they're all based around those. So kind of think about, right, how do we design learning experiences? What are we wanting them to learn? And very rarely does the concept of behavior, and I love the fact you say performance, because that's something I'm really fascinated by. But it's very rarely that this idea actually comes into my mindset. And I speak for a lot of teachers when I say that, but in terms of what behavioral response, what learned behavior, that side of it is rarely thought about. So in terms of the principles of those, if I'm now looking at it going, right, actually, I want to focus on this, what would be some of the principles you would recommend or as starting points that I could go about trying to incorporate into my teaching practices to have those effects?
So I think a good starting point is just to become aware of some of the behavioral design frameworks that exist. Probably the most popular one, and it has its pros and cons, is something called COM-B. And basically, the idea is that if you have capability, opportunity, and motivation, those three factors together contribute to the desired behavior. So you'll see it often written COM equals B. And so when you start to unpack the capabilities, that's often the vertical that contains what you would do in a classroom. But if you're saying, okay, well, what are the opportunities we're creating in order for them to do it? An opportunity could also be things like the resources that are available or the times at which other people are available to meet, many other factors that fall under that. And then also looking at factors that are influencing their motivation. So that's a nice simplified model. There are incredibly complex ones. For example, the theoretical domains framework that has something like 30 factors that it will look at. And again, skills and knowledge would only form one or two of the many factors looked at. So that's quite useful when you're trying to understand what it is somebody needs to be able to do or accomplish. And I think the distinction between do and accomplish will become quite useful later on in this conversation as we move to other topics. But if you're looking at those sorts of things, at first, it's worth kind of doing a diagnosis. And that's where this is very useful, where frameworks like COMBI and theoretical domains framework or the theory of planned behavior, all of these are useful to understand why is it that people are not exhibiting the behavior or the performance or achieving the outcomes that you're interested in. So I think hopefully that makes it a bit clearer as to why this is a useful additional set of lenses when you're developing learning experiences.
That episode as a whole with Justin, I remember leaving it going, wow, I've just spoken to one of the smartest men that I think I've ever come across. It was just my mind. I remember saying at the time that my mind was absolutely blown because he just gave such a different perspective of how to look at lessons, how to look at learning, and how to construct lessons and learning, to the point where, what are we, 7-8 months still on? I use this idea of experiences and opportunity now through everything I've done. It's something that's it's stuck with me and will continue to stick with me. It's just had a profound impact on me, and it's such an intriguing and interesting way to look at what we do as educators, rather than just about imparting knowledge, about delivering content. If we take a step back and go, what opportunities am I providing and what experiences are my students going to get from this? As I say, from my side, it's had a huge, huge impact on how I approach my curriculum design, my lesson planning, and even going further into this concept of like authentic assessment and building real world scenarios, experiential opportunities for students. It was just fantastic. And obviously in that clip as well, he talked, I've got to get this right now, COMBI, and just one of the simplistic ways. So capability, opportunity, motivation goes to behavior. And it's quite an interesting one because whenever we talk about behavior in education, we focus on behavior management, whereas actually the capability, opportunity, motivation is such a fascinating way to look at a different lens. And even Justin himself mentioned this idea of a lens in which we look through it. And that episode as a whole, I'd really recommend going back to look through it. And it was such a, as I say, I can't really say this enough, a profound experience for me. But go back and listen and watch, because I think there's so many golden nuggets in this episode. I've just picked out one part about learning and about opportunities and about experience that really resonated with me. But yeah, a fantastic episode. Lots of fantastic learning that was in that. Lots that I took away from it, and highly recommend going and having a watch of that episode. This is obviously the second one. I hope you've enjoyed it. Go back and have a look at the first rewind that we did as well, Dan Fitzpatrick. And I will be putting these 10 minutes of 10 impactful episodes out, one every day, up till the 5th of July, which is when season 2 officially finishes. We're off for summer holidays and put little snippets out here and there just to kind of keep things ticking over. But I will be with you tomorrow for the 3rd episode. If you've liked this, hit that like button for me. If you're not yet subscribed to the International Classroom podcast, do so now. But otherwise, I will see you tomorrow with another rewind. 10 minutes, 10 tasks. Looking forward to it, guys. Take care.